Okay, great to see you. You're going to perform very soon at Summer Punch Festival in Warsaw.
Mm,
And P.O.D has a really long story with Polish audience because when you came here for the first time, it was in 2000, you played with Korn. So that was
yeah.
pretty early on your pretty early stage of your career. Do you remember this show?
Yeah, of course. It was our first time um, in most of Europe. I think we've been to Germany one time for like a show in our independent days, and but that was our first time all of Europe. And so seeing each country was just it was new for us. It was a treat, and Poland was awesome. I remember we just having a day off and sitting out and watching, just kind of being a tourist, watching everybody. And everybody was so kind and nice. And obviously, 26 years ago, we stood out like a sore thumb because of our tattoos, our hair, whatnot. So the locals knew that we weren't from there.
Did you have any like encounters with locals?
Yeah, just coming up and asking, where are you from and what are you doing here? And then, as soon as you say, hey, we're in a band, we're on tour with Korn, it's like, oh, okay. And then there was people that, didn't even know who Korn was because it wasn't their style of music or even know who we were, but they just I guess they were just amused by our appearance. But everybody was nice and, wished us a good show and hey, enjoy your day off. And, it was pleasant.
And how do you remember the audience? Because POD was like on the breaking through, and Korn was like breaking, was the biggest
Yeah.
like in the career. Like the new metal was big in 2000. So how do you remember the audience reception?
The it was every show was great. I think that's what I love about Europe and out and even just overseas in general. I think whenever an American band goes over, it's not taken lightly. It's like, oh, I might not be able to see these guys again or I'm going to enjoy it. And so the crowd is always, they're participating, they love it. I think the fact that we were the opener for Korn and they were taking us on tour, the band kind of vouches for you, it's like so the fans are like, well, these guys must be okay, if Corn's taking them out. So no, they didn't give us a hard time.
And do you remember how you meet Korn?
Um, I think that might have been the first time we knew of their band. I remember them playing locally here in San Diego before they blew up. But I had never seen them. I knew of them because of they were already blowing up and on MTV and whatnot. And I was already a fan. And I think that was the first time that we actually got to meet everybody is because they took us out on tour. And so we'll never forget that tour. That was it was a good time.
Mhm. And you were already promoting your third album, but I want to go back to your very beginnings, and I want to ask you, how important was music in your childhood? I think you were from a musical family, pretty much, right?
Not too much. I mean, I think they were all music lovers. My uncle played the drums, my cousin played the drums. People played the guitar, but it wasn't like, I mean, I know some people that every single person in their family plays an instrument. You know what I mean? We weren't like that, but music was constantly playing, and yeah, I didn't. It's not like I grew up thinking that I was going to be in a band or had any desire to be in a band. It just kind of fell into my lap and we did it for fun. And then it just kept going, but I was always working, but music was just a release. So it wasn't like a Hollywood dream or a rock star dream. It was just we love the music and how it makes us feel and what it means to people. And 34, 35 years later, we still feel the same. I often say like I don't think we were ever supposed to be a part of the mainstream audience. We were just playing underground and locally punk rock, hardcore shows. But people were paying attention because we were different back then. And so yeah, I'm grateful for the journey.
And what kind of music did you listen to when you were a kid? Was it rock, hip hop, punk rock?
My family was mostly rock and roll, you know what I mean? But then my dad played a lot of reggae music and alternative music. Um, I think when I kind of got into junior high, I it was like my family was more like Led Zeppelin, Black Sabbath, AC/DC. Um, when I got into junior high, it was more street music, like hip hop and reggae music and punk rock. It was more less glamorous, if that makes sense. For me, rock and roll was kind of big stage and it was too massive for me. I needed something more like punk rock and hardcore that seemed normal to me, like regular people. And I started listening to the moment I heard a band like Bad Brains and realized that, four black guys from Washington, D.C. was into a quote unquote punk rock white music. I was interested, bands like Suicidal Tendencies. It was like, okay, those guys are like me. Why do they play this kind of music? Because punk rock to me was like Sex Pistols. It was from London or England, and I couldn't relate to those guys. I didn't look like them. I wasn't them. But when I saw Suicidal Tendencies and Bad Brains, it was more like, okay, these guys know something I don't. And so it made me dive into that side of the world.
And I think that especially Bad Brains are very influential. I think in all POD members in the interviews mentioned that Bad Brains are very important for you.
Oh, very important to probably one of my favorite bands of all time. Just because of who they were, they were fearless, they I think HR is he's probably one of the best front men of all time, and so yeah, forever and ever a Bad Brains fan.
And how about the Police? Was it one of the first shows you've seen live?
Yes, and I was because of my dad, I was a Police fan, and then they incorporated kind of reggae rhythms and sounds, and so I was a big fan of the Police, and it was the first concert I ever went to, and they were playing a theater here in San Diego, and I was young. Um, yeah, and I've been a fan ever since.
Hmm. What did you like about the Police? Did you like this punk element, or the reggae elements, or pop elements in their music?
I think both. I think they came across as more of a punk rock type of band, carefree, making the music they want, but they were incorporating reggae music, which I also loved. And so to see them put that together and to have that kind of, they made music you can dance to, and they were very open about their love for reggae music and their respect for reggae music and Bob Marley and Still Pulse. There was a lot of English reggae bands at the time, and they were a rock band taking out reggae bands on tour, and I always thought that was cool. It wasn't They just didn't stay in their boat, they're the same genre, and they weren't afraid to experiment, which to this day I still listen to the Police.
And how did hip hop become a part of your life?
It was more just because of what they were saying, and that's something more that I could relate to, growing up in the neighborhood. And so it was a lot of East Coast hip hop. But then, once the West Coast picked it up, it was a different sound. It was definitely more street mentality. And that was something that I had grown up in. Um, but because there was a consciousness to it as well, and there was a realness, there was a struggle in there that I could relate to. It just wasn't, you know, like I said, with rock and roll, it was just so big and massive, and it was glamorous in a sense. When I saw those guys, I thought that was glamorous, and it was very Hollywood. Whereas hip hop, reggae music was more a street music, and so I just gravitated towards that. I still believe that all those that hip hop is it's poetry. It's street poetry, and so I yeah, I just gravitated towards it.
And you also grew up in the time when hip hop and heavy music started to be, merged and combined. Anthrax recorded with hip hop, and
Yeah.
then you had Rage Against the Machine. And I wonder, what was your first impression when you heard a band like Rage Against the Machine?
The first time I heard Rage, actually, it was we were already a band, and there was friends of ours who went to a local show, and they saw Rage. Rage was already signed and everything, and they had a demo tape or a cassette tape, and they went to the show, and the next day they brought the tape to us and said, "Hey, look at these guys sound like you guys." And then we did our research, and then realized that Zach, he was in a band called Inside Out, And Inside Out used to come to San Diego and play all over the Southern California area. But there was a band from San Diego called House of Suffering who mixed hip hop and thrash, hardcore, and Zach used to come and watch them. So that's the band that inspired Rage Against the Machine, or Zach to become Rage Against the Machine. But that was already a scene in our area. Those were our friends. We were already doing shows with them, backyard parties, underground shows. And so when Rage Against the Machine came out, we were like, oh, that's the cat from Inside Out, which we were fans of. We loved that band. And so, but it took bands like Anthrax, obviously Blondie. There was a lot of it was that New York scene that was so street level, grimy and gritty that they weren't afraid to incorporate hip hop sounds and stuff into their music because it was a part of their scene. Blondie, Anthrax, they were all kind of this level. It wasn't until someone like Aerosmith came in the mix and grabbed one of the biggest hip hop, pioneers, Run DMC, and said, "Let's do a song together." And the more that people embrace it, they see it and they're like, "Okay, it's more acceptable." But for us, it was still very, very new to be in the hardcore scene, punk scene. It was still hard for people to accept that these worlds can collide.
Mhm. You also mentioned reggae, and reggae has been always a part, element of P.O.D sound. But last year you released your solo album, and it's like a full reggae album. And I wonder, was it something you wanted always to do, like to do this reggae stuff?
Yeah, I'm still. It's just something that I've grown up in. I've always wanted to do it, but POD has always been number one for me. But that was the time during COVID when we were sitting around in our houses. It gave me the opportunity to be able to mess around and have fun. And so all that stuff was just right here at home. Um, and then I would reach out to guys all over the world, Germany, Argentina, Mexico, everywhere, and just say, hey, I saw they had a website, or I don't know how I found them, but they were making beats and rhythms and stuff. And so I would listen to their music, and they're no namers, they just do it for the love of music. And I would reach out and say, hey, I would love to just put vocals on your song. And they were like, yeah, I'll send it to you. So I just started compiling a lot of songs. And so I wanted to put it out in 2002, but then once COVID started to clear up, our label wanted a POD record. And so I kind of had to put everything on pause, but I've been sitting on those songs for 5, 6 years now. And so it was just finally I just want to release it, do it independently, just so I can start doing shows and just it's just something that I'll continue to do.
And POD released recently "Don't Let Me Down" cover by the Beatles, and I
Mhm.
wonder, like, what kind of inspiration was that?
It's I mean we've always been Beatles fans, but again they were before even our time. So listening to our parents' old records and seeing all their records in the garage and saying, oh, black and white covers and saying, oh, who are these guys? And so very familiar with their songs playing in the background. Um, and we always wanted to do that song. When we had first started, there was a band here from San Diego called Unbroken. And, to be transparent and to give them full credit, they used to cover that song. And it was very straight edge, very hardcore. And we've always loved it. And so in the back of our mind, it was like, oh, maybe someday we'll do that one too. It's a good song to cover. And so, 20 something years later, we finally did it.
And you don't do many covers, do you? Like you did,
No,
you did U2, Bullet the Blue Sky before, but it's
yeah.
one of the few.
Yeah, we enjoy it. We enjoy, obviously we enjoy we're fans of music, but we have so many albums, we have so many songs of our own. If anything, we kind of take bits and pieces from these songs. Even on our we just recorded our new record, and there's a song in there that we didn't cover the song, but we took their hook and we're gonna have someone else re-sing it in a different way, kind of, and incorporate that. So it's very hip hop-esque, where they used to take samples of old music, and so we do it in that way. we did it on the Circles record where we took a line that was very familiar to hip hop and to listeners. So anybody that would hear that would be like, "Oh, that's a throwback to a hip hop song." And so we just like incorporating stuff like that.
Mhm. Yeah, as mentioned, like P.O.D has a lot of great songs, a lot of popular singles, and you do play them live a lot. And I want to do
Mm.
one thing. I did some research online. I found a list of your most played songs live, and I want to
Mm.
give you some titles. And I just want you just to tell the story of the song, how did it happen, like maybe
Okay.
anecdotes, maybe something that you associate with this song. Okay.
Yeah.
So the most played song live is Youth of the Nation.
Yeah, of course. If we didn't play Youth of the Nation, I think people would freak out, like we hate when bands we go see and we love and they don't play their biggest song. It's like that makes no sense,
Mm,
but it was off of one of our biggest records. It's an anthem, it's an anthem everywhere we go. We can play in any country and they know that song, and it's a very unifying song, it's very relatable. It's not one of our heavy songs. So it's a good mix. It's a good mix of what POD does.
do you remember how this song was born?
Yes, we were in the studio, rehearsal studio here in San Diego, and we were practicing writing for the satellite record. And we were with our producer Howard Benson, and it was morning time, so we had went to get a cup of coffee down the street. And this was before cell phones, Um, and when we went to get coffee, we saw the police and ambulance and fire trucks and helicopters. And so because we don't have phones, we had to run back to the studio to turn on the news, to turn on the TV. And as soon as we turned on the TV, we saw that just a few blocks down the road, there was a school shooting. And so we were glued to the TV and just saying, this is our neighborhood, this is our community, and this is happening, And and back then it was still it wasn't as common as it is now. Unfortunately, it's very common, which is a tragedy. But we were glued to the TV, and then our hearts were broken. And then we still had to write a record. And so that's what was birthed that day was, you hear the somber guitar and then the drums and it sets a tone. And then we knew that we need to write a song about young people. And so that's how that song was birthed.
And at what point did you have this idea to invite children to sing this song?
I think it became more of like a Pink Floyd type thing if we had some like voices in the back. And so that was more of a studio decision. And we were in LA recording the song and record. And then we had just come up with the idea, what if we had a choir, a kids choir, to give it also a realness to it, to give it somewhat of a daunting kind of, spooky feeling to it because it, it's a little bit more real when you hear the voice of children, and this is happening to our kids. So it was just all part of sonically just building the song to what it is.
Mm. And the second most played live song is Alive from the same album. So again,
Yeah,
do you remember how this song was born?
same thing. It's that song is an anthem all over the world. Um, when we wrote the music, before I even wrote the lyrics, it already had this feeling. Normally, we write the music, and it's kind of what the music inspires vocally, lyrically, melodically. Um, and we were actually recording in Hollywood, and we lived up there from Monday through Friday. We would drive back to San Diego for the weekend. And at the time, my daughter was she was just born, my first daughter, and so I came home for the weekend. Monday, I was scheduled to do vocals for this song, and I didn't have the lyrics. I knew that I wanted the song to be called Alive, and I had an idea of the chorus, but I hadn't written the lyrics yet. And so on the way up Sunday night to Hollywood, I asked my wife if she would drive so that I can finish the lyrics to record in the morning. You know how like when if you have a child and then your friends will say, "Oh, your daughter or your son, they look just like you." Well, I never saw that in my daughter. And then on the way to LA, she was asleep in her car seat, and I am writing the lyrics. And when I had turned around, the headlights from the traffic were shining on her face. And when I seen her I took a look at her, and that was the first time that I saw myself in her. And so I was still amazed by it. I was stunned by it, and I was shocked that I can see myself in my daughter. And so instantly I turned around and I started to write the lyrics to the song. The next morning when I got in, I said, I'm finished with the lyrics. And then I just gave it a whirl, and that was it. That was the birth of Alive.
Beautiful, beautiful story, and it's very personal story. But I also remember that the album Satellite came out on 9/11, and then the
Yes.
song Alive was like in the radio, on MTV, everywhere. So I think in many people's mind, this song is associated with 9/11, with these times.
Most definitely. I mean, it was a tragedy, but we're always grateful that our song it meant something at that time. Our label they hadn't even taken us internationally. We were still even though we sold 1 million records on the last album, we were still a small band to them, and they were just working us in the U.S. But we happened to be on rock radio here in the States. We were number one MTV video on TRL. And so people knew of the song. And then when 9/11 happened, the song just happened to stand out. When you have, especially rock and roll and metal, it's sex, drugs, rock and roll. It's very, whether it's depressing or very anti this or whatever. Here's P.O.D. with a song that says, I feel alive for the very first time. So in that moment, in U.S. history and the world, they were looking for answers and the solution. What is happening to the world? Why is this going on? Does God exist? Whatever question, and then you have a band from nowhere saying, "I feel alive. I'm grateful to be alive," and so that song stood out. And so I'm not happy that 9/11 happened, but I'm grateful that we were a band and still are a band that wants to make that kind of impact. We're not here to just entertain people. There's a reason why we became a band, and it was for moments like this. It was to be a light into the world. It was to be a hope. And that song to this day, 25 years later, still offers hope. Every time we play it, every time you hear it, we've had more stories about that song than anything, from people that are suicidal or depressed or addicted. That song means the world to them. And so that makes what we do all worth it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And the third most played song is Boom, the same album.
Well, that album just happened to be was our most successful, so a consumer is always going to say, oh, I love this record or I love these singles because yeah, it was everywhere. But most likely the fan that follows you around forever is going to pick a song, an obscure song off a record that nobody knows about, and say that's my favorite song, because they're hardcore. But Boom is all three songs are completely different from one another. Boom is more, it's its own anthem in a way. It's very high energy driven. It has a relationship with sports, on TV and games, and so people know it because of that. It's very very gym driven. A lot of people tell us, "Oh, I listened to that song in the gym," or stuff like that. So it's a whole different attitude. It's about our city. It's more of a POD sound.
Hmm. I want to skip to number 10 on the list because this is without Ja Nothing, and you mentioned Bad Brains, and HR
Yeah.
sings on this song. So I wonder, what is the story behind the song?
At the time, HR was very elusive. Nobody knew where he was, if he was alive, if he was crazy, if we heard he was homeless, all these things. And our A&R guy, he knew that HR and Bad Brains were, one of our ultimate favorites. So, excuse me. So, we obviously we were we were because of our hip hop side, we want to have collaborations. We always did that, even in our independent records. which was very uncommon to rock and roll at the time. Now it's everybody does it, but that was more of our hip hop mentality. And we wanted to guest, and we told our A&R guy, if there's any way you can get HR, that would be a dream come true. And so he somehow, some way, magically, he found him and he flew him into to Hollywood in California, and he walked in as mystic as he is, very unusual. And he came in and we showed him the song and he freestyled the whole thing. Um, it was a very he walked in with a headdress, normal clothes with a headdress like Haile Selassie, like Ethiopian crown, and he walked in with a cage with two canaries in it. And he just walked in the studio, he put down the cage of canaries, and then he introduced himself to all of us, and we went in and showed him the song, and he went in and freestyled the whole thing. So it was an unusual situation, but I wouldn't expect anything different from all the stories that we had heard about HR. He lived up to, the confusion.
I love this song because it shows like two sides of P.O.D. It starts like a hardcore song, and then in the
Mm.
middle it changes into this reggae freestyle vibe, which is crazy.
Yeah. Very, very bad brains, and that's we knew that coming, doing that song, it was a throwback to H to Bad Brains and to what we love. And we had this idea of having HR on it. So it only makes sense, with to have him on it. And it was an honor.
I guess that meeting someone like HR is a very like amazing experience, and I wonder like did you meet other heroes that made a great impression on you?
Yes, I think every artist that we've featured on our record since, that record we had Eka Mouse, we had Mike Muir from Suicidal Tendencies, Paige Hamilton from Helmet, Lou from Sick of It All, Jamie from Hatebreed. We've had all these bands. We had Bob Marley's daughters sing background on another reggae song. Modest Yahoo before he blew up. We've had Sendog from Cypress Hill, Booyah Tribe, Stick Jack. The list goes on. All legends, to us and to the world, and to have them on our record was amazing. And so they were all gentlemen, and they were amazing. They're our friends to this day. And I guess that's kind of the perk of doing what we do is you meet so many of your heroes.
Mhm. Now you're working on your new album. I guess the work is pretty advanced. So how advanced is the work on the new album?
We actually finished it. We spent a couple weeks in Philadelphia as our first time recording outside of California. Um, and it came out more incredible than we had ever planned. I think we were more prepared to go into the studio this time. We had already done writing on tour. Uh, Vocally, I had finished about 9 songs here at home, and so the producer is Will Yip. He just won Best Rock Album with Turnstile. He won a Grammy for Best Rock Album. But we had already been friends prior and agreed to work together even before all of that. Um, and so we went with him, and we only had 2 weeks, and we didn't even think we'd finish the record. We just wanted to get started, but we went in, and because we were so prepared, and Will is such a genius, we finished the whole record. And so now we're done with 13 songs, ready to be mixed and mastered. And so hopefully you'll start hearing songs soon enough. But it's heavy, but also it's extremely beautiful. I'm singing in ways that I've never done before, and he really pushed me to do that. It's the first time Marcos ever wrote on a 7-string guitar. So we have about 6 or 7 songs on a 7-string song, and yeah, it's amazing. I would even dare to say it could be the best album that we've ever written.
Great. Do you have like a timeline when it's going to be released or when the first single is going to be released?
I know we will probably start releasing singles, just waterfalling it, but we're already coming into all of our touring in Europe, and the holidays will be here, and so if I was to guess, I would guess maybe the first quarter of next year. But that allows us to release 3 or 4 songs beforehand, which we like doing. We like sending out songs and just getting people, familiar with it. But we'll be touring our butts off up until then, and so most likely we'll land an amazing tour to support it. And yeah, I can't wait for the whole world to hear it.
And you mentioned Will Yip, who work also with Turnstile. What do you think about bands like Turnstile, which are like a new generation of punk rock, hardcore, which is completely different, fresh view on this genre? What do you think about it?
Yeah, I one thing I love about Turnstile is when I listen to them, I can hear all of their influences, but they make it their own, and that's what you're supposed to do. And because they are a hardcore band, because they are from the streets, it's very genuine and authentic. Whereas a lot of rock and roll bands, they just want to sound like what they listen to, or they want to sound like whatever is going to sell, or whatever the consumer wants. And so they're just making music to be famous, or to do this. Where a band like Turnstile is they're making music, and they're not chasing anything. And that's how P.O.D was. We weren't chasing it, it came to us. And so you hold on to your integrity, your dignity, your honor. And I love that about them. And now they're getting what they deserved, and that's recognition. And I hope that every band learns from that instead of chasing it, because that's what we're losing in this industry is authenticity. There's no original. That's what I love about the era that we came in with, the Corns of the world, the Deftones, System, Limp Bizkit, all of us. We were Everybody sounded like themselves, and it was our own music. Whereas today, 99% of the bands, it's back to Hollywood rock and roll days, like we talked about earlier. It's just how big can I be? What a rock star. Now most of these guys in bands, they're not even. It's not has nothing to do with their music. It's all about this. And it's about their phone, and they're more like rock and roll influencers than they are about the music. And that's what I hate about this industry. They're just puppets. But so bands like Turnstile and even Knock Loose, bands like Knock Loose, like they're real. They came from the scene, which is awesome. They didn't just like start a band and then get signed, and their first show is in front of thousands of people. They played the broken down clubs, and just like POD did. So I love it, man. I hope more bands like that come up.
Absolutely. And POD, besides of great singles, great albums, great live act, you are at the scene you've been over 30 years on the scene. And what is great, what is really, unique about you, you have almost unchanged lineup, which is, it's a rarity for a bands like you, who people like change, the
Yeah.
bands are changing, and you have almost the same lineup. I wonder what is the secret to be so close together for all the time.
I mean, we did. We're brothers. We started off close, In the meantime, right now, my cousin, the original drummer, he's not with us right now. But that's just life, That's just taking care of business on outside of music, and trying to get our lives together, But in the meantime, this is what we do. We're having more fun now than ever before. I think we're more appreciative that we're still here 34, 35 years later, and we still get to travel the world. We still get to make amazing records. And so we're not jaded, I think our relationship is, at least as far as Marcos and Trey goes, we're closer now than ever before. And I think that's just more because we are appreciative of what we get to do. And so we're not taking that for granted. And so we'll keep playing as long as people are still listening.
Okay, Sonny, thank you very much for the interview. POD will be playing Summer Punch Festival this June in Warsaw, so hope to see you there. Hope you have a great time.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much, brother.
Thank you very much. Bye.
See you, buddy.